So far, I've been doing everything I can to melt cheeses. Here's one that won't melt whatever we do to it. It's ricotta. Fantastic cheese. And what I'm going to do is make a cheesecake. But we need to clear something up first. This is not one of those horrible, biscuity, basey, creamy messes. This is a baked cheesecake. It's fantastic. It's a heavy sponge rich with cheese. First thing we're going to do is we're going to cream down some butter and some sugar. I'm going to use one of these handy little things. Just softening up the butter, whisking a bit of air into it, mixing it with the sugar. OK, one of the main flavours in this are the lemons. And these are fantastic unwaxed lemons. I'm going to grate those into it. It always gives me a feeling of summer, because the smell that comes off this grater when you're doing this is fantastic. What we're looking to do is just grate the very outside skin of the lemon, the rind, all the way down to the pith. But we're not trying to grate the white away, because that's quite bitter. And it's important to go straight into a bowl. Don't grate the lemon onto the board, because you lose a lot of the oils are just lost onto the chopping board. Right. Now we're going to add to that some egg yolks, which is going to enrichen the mix. Mix the whole thing in. Right. Into that, we're going to put some ricotta. So we're going to throw this whole lump of ricotta into there. And what that means is when you've got your sponge, it's got this fantastically dense texture to it, because the cheese doesn't melt.
And the reason for this is that ricotta is made from whey rather than curds. There are fewer calcium ions in it, so the protein chains are clumped together and won't unravel when heated. The ricotta just doesn't melt.
I'm just going to whisk up some egg whites. Just going to lighten the load of the sponge. It's quite a dense, heavy sponge because of the ricotta. Right. The egg whites are going to go into here. I'm going to beat the first bit in quite vigorously, just to incorporate it into the mix. And then the next one, we're going to do more of a folding in sort of action, just to keep the air in the egg whites. There we are. And now 2 more ingredients. A little bit of baking powder and some flour. Now, it's possible to make a baked cheesecake without any flour at all. I quite like the density, I quite like the cakiness that the flour gives it. It also plays quite an important part in the dish, because what it's doing is the moisture released by the ricotta during cooking, the little moisture that there is absorbed by the flour. So you're absolutely drying out your mixture, so it's actually quite a useful property. The only thing we need now is a tin to bake that in. It's a non-stick tin, but belt and braces and all that, we'll give it a bit of a greasing. There we are, just working the butter all the way around. Although it's a dense mixture, it will rise up the side of the pan, and then it'll dip down a little bit as well. In with some flour. What the flour does is just stops it burning. If you can imagine, if you just greased it with fat, it gets very, very warm, the fat. It reaches a much higher temperature than it would without any fat on it. So by doing a flouring coating around the edge, you're just sort of levelling the temperature back off. A bang out, there we are. Mix in. There we go. There you go. All right. It will find a natural level under the heat of the oven, but just smoothing it out. From here to the oven, 35 minutes.
In the oven, any moisture left in the ricotta evaporates, making the protein clumps even more dense, bringing out a fuller cheese flavour.
Look at that. That is looking pretty good. There we go. Lovely. Get rid of that. Right. Normally let this cool down a little bit. I'm just going to take a... There you go. And this is a cheesecake. Look at the density of that. It's fantastic. That is a real cheesecake. No biscuits. Cream consumption, very important when you're making cakes. There we go. More tea, Vicar?
Our taste for cheese is changing. There is now a strong consumer appetite for specialist cheeses.
In the 1970s and 80s, it was all about convenience. People wanted to eat on the go, running. Now, it's turning, and people, yes, still want to eat quickly, but they are more concerned about where their food comes from. They are looking for those key words like organic. They're looking for those keywords like artisan.
This search for good food has increased the number of specialist cheese shops in Britain.
Here you have 120 cheeses, and each one has its own little identity, and that's the curiosity. Let's try new flavours.
To mature the cheese to perfection, a French technique called affinage is used.
Affinage for a specialist cheese shop is the raison d'etre. It's the thing that really matters. We work on cheeses ripening, washing and maturing in our cellars so that when we sell it in the perfect condition. Here we've got lovely little cheeses from Burgundy called Epoisses. They're washed in a Mar de Bourgogne, which is an alcohol. It gives this lovely glisten to the cheese because it's the connection with the alcohol and the enzymes in the cheese react and they make it go orange. And by doing this and then ripening it in our cellars, we are making it moister and chewier and richer. It's a delightful way of reaching perfection in a product.
This is the sandwich to end all sandwiches. Strawberry jam, lashings of, slap that on there, spread that around, and then finally, lump of cheddar, slice it nice and thick. The stronger the better. Good cheddar should hurt your mouth, I think. There we are. That onto the bread, that one on top. Not the most technical thing I'll ever make, but definitely one of the most satisfying. Good.
For a free set of recipe cards, which includes today's ricotta and lemon cheesecake and details of all Open University programmes, call 0870 900 0314 or go to open2.net where you'll find all the recipes from this series. Next week on Ever Wondered, seafood.